In a world where voices silenced and darkness tries to reign, Richie and John take the airwaves, igniting hope again. With every word they broadcast against oppression's tide, their voices lift and resonate with unwavering pride. In a time of trials and struggles where hatred would confine, they champion equal rights for all, a love that's truly blind. Thankful for Richie and John this Thanksgiving Day, for advocating justice and paving a brighter way. Their podcast rings with courage with every truth they say, lighting paths to freedom on this rugged winding day. From stages of division where bigots storm with fears, Richie and John amplify the silent, drowning out the cheers. In the face of world leaders who seek to oppress, their voices rise unwavering for fairness to confess. Across the airwaves we gather under rainbows unite. Richie and John behead the march, resilient in the fight. Thanksgiving marks the moments to honor their endless strive for dignity and equality, keeping human rights alive. Thankful for Richie and John, defenders of the three, for lifting voices strong and true so all the world can see. With love and fear conviction, they challenge to be just. Advocating brightly, they hold our steadfast trust. In podcasts they inspire against leaders filled with spite. Richie and John are beacon, igniting the equal rights fight. Their tales of resistance fill hearts where courage rose, blazing trails of freedom where acceptance boldly shows. So this Thanksgiving, united hope and thanks we sing to Richie and John for lifting voices as they ring. Their advocacy a beacon across this vast domain, ever grateful for their courage as brighter futures gain.
The Mutual Broadcasting System presents Richie and John, the podcast that connects you with the people, events, headlines, and lifestyle interests of the global LGBTQ+ community. Here's Richie Roy and John McMullen.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of Richie and John. It's great to have you with us as we go into the week of Thanksgiving. I am based in Palm Springs, California, and Richie, you are in the Hudson Valley in New Paltz, New York, and it is a pleasure to get together on this pre-holiday edition and talk about something that's going to be very difficult, I think, for some people to talk about this time of year, this particular year, and that is, can we be grateful for anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think it's a good exercise, actually, because I think there's always things to be grateful of or, at least appreciative of. And a lot of times, especially like right now, things are so gloomy and there are a lot of things that we can be really upset about. But there still are good things. And I will say, for instance, it rained here today and it has not rained.
That's a good thing?
Yeah, because it hasn't rained in months. We're in a serious drought. There are wildfires up here in my area, in my neck of the woods.
Wait, did you move to California and I didn't even know?
I was always like, I can't move back to California because of the droughts and the wildfires, and now we have them here. But we had rain today, so I was like, you know what? I'm thankful for a little bit of rain. But it is a good exercise, and I think I was thinking about this and talking with a friend, and I think one thing I'm very thankful for is that there are organizations out there that are tirelessly working in everyone's best interest, even in times that are really difficult. And I'm thinking specifically about things like the ACLU or the NYCLU. And, I feel like after the election, there was this desire to kind of just tune out, to kind of disassociate because it was so gloomy and so scary. And it is scary and gloomy. But the ACLU, the people who work there, they don't have the luxury of just tuning out and gloom and dooming themselves into oblivion. They're the ones who are going to be there filing the restraining orders, filing the papers, doing the work. And I think there are a lot of organizations, whether LGBTQ or otherwise, that are going to be continuing the fight wherever the fight takes us. And that includes Democrats in Congress and in the Senate, who are going to be there and be voices of dissent, even if that's as much as we get is a voice of dissenting opinion. They're still there doing it. So
it still matters. I think something that a lot of people don't understand is that when it comes to history being written, everything that happens in the United States House of Representatives and in the United States Senate, everything that happens in the Supreme Court, everything that happens at the White House, all of that stuff is preserved, or it is supposed to be preserved. I mean, we had a president, previous president, who's going to be the future president, who did his best to burn things, or people in his administration did, or throw things down the toilet or whatever. But the way that it does work is that we preserve all of this, have all this documentation, so that down the road we're going to know what has been happening. And fortunately, one of the things that we're really, I think, blessed with is that even when we have administrations that don't do what they're supposed to do, don't follow by the rules, is that we have tattletales. And people love to tell stories about what really happened. And at some point, hopefully, there will be some level of accountability for the things that have not gone the way they were supposed to. But at least in the future, other generations ahead of us will know what went on and what to try and avoid.
Yeah. And, I think another thing to think about there is that history is really long. And there are nations that continue to exist that have had periods of feckless, terrible governance for long periods of time, and they managed to weather it somehow and pull through. America is a very young country, obviously, and fairly untested. And I guess, in a way, this will be a test of what do we do when we have a leader who is clearly unfit and incurious and mainly is going to use an administration to settle scores and play grudge matches. This is not the first country that's had a terrible leader. Yeah. So we're in for a little piece of history, I guess.
Yeah. Where are we, like at 248 years? And you compare that with places that you've been and you've seen buildings where they have chipped into them that they were in existence in, the 5th, 6th, 7th centuries. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's like, when you go to somewhere like the Metropolitan Museum and, they have like a temple or something, and there's graffiti on there from, 1500 BC that basically said, for a good time, call, Pilatus or whomever. So yeah, history is long, and we're just here living through this blip of it.
It is interesting though that you say that, because I was having a conversation today with one of our friends who we know from other social media avenues, and one of the things that we were discussing was exactly along that line, and how it's hard sometimes when you're younger and don't have the experience or the knowledge of having gone through something, just how much time has elapsed and what transpired in certain periods of time. And so I know that, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I had no appreciation for what people had done 50 years ahead of me. Mm-hmm. And we have people who are at that same point now that are completely unaware of things that when I was in high school or college aged that we were going through, and how things have changed and how things have gotten better, and then how things have, it's like the Texas two-step, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And sometimes it really sucks to have to go at that pace, but that's where we are. And my hope is just that we're going to break this cycle at some point, and people are going to understand that people of all sorts, people with all backgrounds, people who come from all different countries and different ethnicities and whatnot, are going to survive. They're going to be here. And you've got to learn at some point to get the fuck along with them, Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like, I think we're not there, but, a good example is that there are failed states, people still live and work in a situation where there's essentially a failed state. It's not pretty. And a lot of times it can actually be a lot of privation and a lot of despair. But people weather it, and countries have gotten through really dark times.
How many times do you think, Richie, that people have had that feeling? I talked to somebody today who was actually here in Palm Springs at our recent get-together that we had for a bunch of our listeners. And this person, I don't want to say that they've drunk the Kool-Aid and that they've gone totally conspiracy theory and all that kind of crazy, but they're definitely concerned to the point where they're thinking about leaving the country. And I was sitting there trying to encourage them and say, look, if all of us who think that it would just be easier to get up and leave the country did that, there'd be nobody left to fight and to make it worth coming back to. And this person was arguing with me that well, that might be so, but there have been other times in history where people have had to leave their home country, go outside the country to do the things to save that other country and come back later. I don't think that that's the solution to this problem. And I can only imagine the place getting worse, not better, if we all walk away from it, even though there's going to be, it's going to be one of those no pain, no gain situations. However, I think that there is a fair amount of truth to the concept that, things are going to hurt tremendously more for a few years at least, and maybe for a generation or two because of the setbacks that we're experiencing right now. But it is weird to stop and think for a minute, am I facing the potential end of humanity? Because there are some very serious things that have happened in this past week around the world. And even the skirmishes between Russia and the Ukraine, and the fact that they delivered ICBM missiles that would ordinarily be what carries a nuclear payload on them. Fortunately, that was not the case, but that could have been the case. And you've got that going on. You've got what's going on between Iran and Israel and, arguably Lebanon, and what's going on between the United States and China and the South Koreans. There's a lot of reason, I think, for people to be concerned that we may be setting in place the final World War game. I'd like to think that that's overblown and a bunch of hyperbole, but maybe it is and maybe it isn't. I don't know. But I hope it's not the way it's going to end. I don't want to think that I was one of the ones who was fortunate enough to be here to watch the end game. Please, let me have my own personal end game, not that for every living being on the planet.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, and the thing is, there's a lot of reason to have existential thoughts like that. I think, another big one is climate change. I mentioned the rain today, but it's been a drought for months. And that's not usual for New York State. New York State generally has a lot of rain. Just the general timbre of kind of the weirdness of weather and the trends of climate change are another kind of existential dread thing, Yeah. That one's slower. It's not like, one person can click a button in Moscow or in DC or in Seoul or wherever and, cause havoc. But it's like, it's a collective problem because everyone's choices are just leading inexorably towards a warmer planet. And that's
that there's not Jewish space lasers and that the government doesn't have any control of the weather?
Well, I mean, if you ask some Republicans, Democrats can turn the hurricanes on when they want to influence an election, which obviously didn't work for us. Our weather machine was not up to snuff, apparently.
Here's why I'm going to argue with you on that point, and that is because the West Coast is solidly blue, solidly friendly to the Democratic Party, right? California, Oregon, Washington.
Yeah.
Well, the problem with that is that this past week in Washington State and in Oregon and I think now in Northern California, we've had a situation where the weather has been even worse than it normally would be this time of year with regards to that. And I don't think that the governors of Washington, Oregon, and California would have turned on this thing that they're calling a bomb
cyclone.
Cyclone, yeah. It was pretty nasty. I had friends who were going through that, and in fact, I'm flying to Seattle on Monday, so we're not going to have another show this coming week until next Saturday. We're going to give you the holiday off, and this is why we've decided to make this a show where we're going to talk about gratitude, which is, of course, what we're discussing right now, because we have lots of gratitude for weather change and things like that, and for administrative changes in the United States of America. I don't know about you, Richie, but I'm so thankful that Donald Trump is coming back into power.
Okay.
God, you know I'm being facetious, right? Please don't strike me.
But, again, it's the small things that you can be thankful for. I will give you an example of a thing I'm thankful for. It's going to sound very silly, but a friend of mine got me for my birthday a membership to Costco.
Oh, nice.
And I went there today, and it's like.
Wait, where's the closest one to you? Is there one?
It's an hour and a half away.
See, if I had known you had one close to you, but you've always told me that there's not one close to you, I would have been that friend who gave you one of those.
An hour and a half is not close, but I
know.
made the trek, and it's like Disneyland for adults, and because it has all the things you want. It's huge, it's exciting, and at the end of it, you're exhausted. Just like going to Disneyland.
And broke. Yeah.
And broke, just like Disneyland.
Yeah, just like Disney.
And so it's kind of that vibe, but it's also, I'm thankful for companies like Costco that lean democratic, that have good values, good corporate values, and aren't sort of so relentlessly driven by the bottom line that they cut corners on quality, on how they treat their employees and all of that. Because Costco, generally their house brand products are top of the line at a great price. They treat their employees well. They're just a good company.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, sure.
I have family who work at multiple family members who work at different warehouses, and a couple that have been in corporate, and it is a good company, and it was a great company when it was under the direction of Mr. Senegal. His replacement as the CEO of the organization is not quite as evolved as he is, but he is, and set a tone in that company that was extraordinary. Yeah. And I don't have a problem on earth supporting them. In fact, I think I mentioned in a chat space that we were in the other night that I don't shop, and I've never really shopped at Walmart. If I'm going to go to a warehouse type of store where they have general goods, it's generally going to be Costco.
Yeah.
And part of that is because of their commitment to customer service and fair pricing. And they don't make a lot of money on the products. The profit margins that are figured in are simply to cover the cost of goods and operating expense. That's it, not an additional profit. The profit is all taken, and I've heard this directly from people who I know who are shareholders and have gone to the shareholder meetings. The profits all come from their membership. That's where they make their, excess. That's
the bread and butter. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I think that things like that, so Costco and other examples is, I'm grateful that there exists.
Did you get a rotisserie chicken?
I did. Of course I did.
Because that is a loss leader item for them. And they're not changing the price on it ever because of that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That, and I got that. I got the hot dog, the $1.50 hot dog and soda combo.
Yeah.
I got that too. I had to. But yeah, I mean, there's Costco, there's other companies like that. I was going to say another thing I'm thankful for is that there is this, designation B Corp, which is a fairly newish, I mean, not like brand new, but not that it's fairly new. And it's a type of corporation that profits don't have to be the only factor that they think about. And so a B Corp can have a mission statement, can have a set of values. For instance, let's say environmental stewardship, where their shareholders understand that that is a core value that can trump shareholder return. Because under like the standard kind of business, or an S Corp, a publicly traded company, a normal publicly traded company, their business is meant to return maximum shareholder returns. That's right. The board and the company, that is their job, and if you try to go out on a limb and do something good for the world, good for, the employees, whatever, you could get voted out because that's not what you're supposed to be focusing on. But a B Corp can choose to value workers, can value the environment, can value, let's say, sourcing 100% vegan products or whatever. And I like that because when I go shopping, I will, and especially it's in things like personal goods, like cosmetics and things like that, and some household wares and stuff. But you turn the package over, you see B Corp on it, that this is a company that is thinking about something other than just the profit margin.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
Although
I'm so happy
I'm not sure if we should anticipate that going away in the next administration, but I could see somebody sitting behind the Resolute desk going, "What the fuck?
Right?
Who does that?
Yeah. How dare they?
How dare they?"
But yeah. So that.
No, I agree with you. All those things are things to be grateful for in our society today. I'll just tell you quickly. I have a couple of things that I'm really grateful for. First of all, I have a family member who has faced a significant challenge this year with cancer. And fortunately, he was able to get rid of that, at least for now. And hopefully it stays that way. But I'm grateful for that and the fact that my family has reasonably okay health. I've faced a lot of health challenges in the last few years. And, knock on wood, I'm not really afflicted with anything significant at the moment. Hopefully it stays that way. So I'll be grateful for my health, and especially in staying healthy through a period like we're going through now where there's so much stress and worry in the world, and where you and I specifically, and a couple of our other friends have been carrying the weight of a lot of grief and stress of other friends of ours who have been going through it really bad for the last several months. And I just hope beyond all hope that they're going to get a break in 2025 and that they're going to be able to get back on track with their lives and not have to face some of those challenges. I'm also grateful for the fact that there are so many young people in our LGBTQ community right now who are feeling the things that we have felt through some other really hard election results over the last 20, 25 years. And they're not losing faith in the process and in wanting to fight for making sure that, we minimize the problems that we have as a society. I'm grateful for all the people who are out there saying, if you have a problem, please don't hesitate to call on me. Don't hesitate to talk with me if you're really feeling it and just need somebody to help get you through the moment. I think that as much as ever, we are going to be really relied upon by one another to help people face whatever these tough moments are. I am blown away by the sheer number of people I know who have been diagnosed with disorders that I can't even imagine, with, especially anxiety. And I get how anxious one can get with some of the things that are going on in today's world. But I know that you and I have been very open on this program and talking with people about how we have tried to help and continue to try and help and want to be here to try and help our friends who, whether they're people who are listening in our audience or they are people that we have had as guests in our home or people that we go out and socialize with. Nothing is so bad that it's worth walking away from your life, because there's so much opportunity out there. You don't know what waits around the corner for you tomorrow. And yes, there could be some more bad stuff, but there's just as much of a chance that there could be some really good stuff. And I'm grateful that we have surrounded ourselves with a network of people in our chosen family of friends to persevere through this really kind of suck-ass time. And I don't mean suck-ass in the fun way.
Right. Yeah. No, that's another, the concept of a chosen family and the existence of a chosen family for us, and I know for everyone who has one, is something to be immensely thankful for. And I think if you don't have a chosen family now, you should work on it. You should find a chosen family. And I think that everyone deserves one. And I think, of course, LGBTQ folks, we've talked about chosen family for a long time, but really everyone needs to have that group of people who they jibe with, who they could, Thanksgiving rolls around, they could roll up at their dinner table and have a wonderful time and not have it be fractious, not have it be weird and stressful, and not have a bunch of baggage from the past. And it's good. And those are the people too right now to be checking in on, you know. Like it reminds me in a way, we used to have to do this during COVID when we did what we called wellness checks. Remember when
Right.
you just text a friend and be like, hey, how are you holding up? You know, we did wellness checks, and right now is another time for a different reason that wellness checks are really worth bringing back.
Yeah. And hey, if you've got a couple of extra seats at your dinner table this Thursday for Thanksgiving, and you know somebody who might, you know, just be on their own, maybe somebody who recently lost somebody, or somebody whose significant other and them are no longer together, and might be facing otherwise unusually difficult holiday time, pick up the phone and call them and invite them over. How hard is it to fit one more person around the table, or two? You know, it's not that much of a problem at an occasion like Thanksgiving, when you're usually having plenty on the table to pass the plates around and have good conversation and good cheer, and, you know, lift a glass or two and just feel good in the moment. We're very fortunate that we still have, as much as we fear the loss of certain freedoms and rights and things, that we have the benefits and, you know, the rights that we do have still intact. And let's not forget how important those things are. I also want to acknowledge one other thing that I'm really grateful for in 2024, and that is Eli Lilly. And usually I would not say that I'm grateful for a pharmaceutical company, but they create a class of products that have helped me take on a challenge that I've fought with my entire adult life, and that is the raft around my waist. I'm very grateful for having had a resource like Mounjaro and its sister drug Zepbound, is what they call it, for people who are not diabetic. I am, but the fact that has helped me to lose almost 100 pounds this year really gave me kind of a second wind in trying to get my health and my life back under control. So I'm grateful to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's huge. And I think, you know, there are I think that's another just general area to be thankful for is medical advances, medical research and stuff is continuing, you know, continues to really make great strides. You know, one of the things that we talked about in the show before is moving forward towards PrEP that is basically PrEP that's injectable, that you can do every 6 months, you know, or at some point it might be every year.
Right.
And so, you know, that's an advance that's going to have huge benefits for a lot of people.
Of course.
Oh.
And you know, along that same line, I think it's also important to make a historical point of reference, especially for some of our younger listeners who just don't necessarily know this, but that is that when we were in the George W. Bush administration, there was a freeze put on for 8 years, put on universities and research labs across this country that were doing an enormous amount of work in the early days of working with stem cell research. And there were a number of these things that were in development back then and suddenly stopped and came to a halt, and all because there were arguments that, you know, faith-based arguments that, you know, stopped all of this stuff from happening. And I can tell you, having had a friend of mine who was at one of the major universities in North Carolina and doing research, how bad it really was at that time, and being told about things that were in development but were on hold while he was still in office. And just knowing that, you know, these things will get picked up again, but not until we make the right changes. And, you know, again, this is one of the reasons that I feared so much the return to office of somebody who was going to carry out the marching orders of an organization like the Heritage Foundation, and their Project 2025 nonsense. It's not all about top line headlines and about, the NRA and, Second Amendment stuff and all that. There are a lot of things that will be impacted by, by this administration that have an impact on everyday people and their everyday lives and making them better or worse. So, be prepared. And this is why we have to continue to stand together and to fight and make sure we get a chance to fix some of this problem in 2 more years. We don't have to wait for 4 more years. We can nip it in the bud in just 2 years. And by the way, for those of you who didn't realize, this past Wednesday, we had a situation occur that was actually our first victory in this new administration era. And that is that somebody had to step away from their suggested appointment to the administration. So Matt Gaetz is not going to be your attorney general.
Yeah.
That was our first victory of the new administration. So take it for what it is. And they may not all come that easy, but we wiped him off the board.
Yeah.
And that's the way it should have been from the start.
Yep, absolutely.
In fact, I'm thinking, just how the Washington Post during the first Trump administration kept track and counted more than 30 some odd thousand lies that were told by the president during Trump V.1 or V1.0. I've almost felt like we should start keeping track, today with the beginning of this being Mr. Gaetz is having to step away from being the Attorney General designee. I think that we should begin to count, our victories now so that we can keep track of things and remind people that as we go through the tough days, that there are going to be some victories for us too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I'd like to change our direction just a little bit. And that is because we're in the week of Thanksgiving and because Richie is our resident foodie, I would like to turn our attention, if we could for a moment, to maybe some ideas for people, what people are thinking in the kitchen for Thanksgiving Day. And maybe a few ideas that are not necessarily typical Thanksgiving fare, but that you love on Thanksgiving Day. I know one of them has to do with stuffing in a particular type.
I mean, I am a cornbread stuffing person. I love it. I think it's delicious. My mom's recipe includes a very idiosyncratic ingredient, which is water chestnuts. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's really good. So it's pretty much a very standard cornbread style, stuffing or, dressing, however you want to call it, with the broth. And you make a cornbread, then you crumble it up. Put broth and celery, and usually this one involves green bell pepper and some other little things. And I can't remember all the things that go into it at this point. But chopped up water chestnuts are in there, and it's really nice because it's texturally. They don't have a ton of flavor, water chestnuts, but they are texturally fun, kind of chewy and crunchy, and they have this interesting texture to them. And so much of Thanksgiving food is kind of baby food textured. It's very finely milled, very soft.
Right.
And so having something that has a little tooth to it is actually really fun. So I do love that. And another thing I will suggest is any way to get more acid and tartness into your Thanksgiving table, all the better. Obviously, cranberries,
yeah,
are essential, and not the can, but you make your own.
No,
and
canned,
not the can. You make your own, and it's better because you can adjust the sweetness and tartness to your desire. You can add,
and they just taste good when they're fresh.
They taste amazing when they're fresh.
Yeah.
And they're fun when you cook them. They kind of pop, like they kind of burst when they're cooking, and they cook down into this nice, great texture, with some orange peel and some clove and some port wine can be great in there. Delicious.
I feel like because I'm going to be driving down the West Coast this week from Seattle back to Palm Springs, I feel like maybe I should stop in Grays Harbor on the way between Seattle and Portland, because that is where Ocean Spray actually has a huge part of its operation for growing and harvesting cranberry.
Oh, cool. Yeah. But the cranberries, but also other things too. Like at Costco, I got a pallet of pomegranates, which are available right now.
Right.
And maybe something like a kale and pomegranate salad, because the pomegranate seeds are kind of tart, and maybe with a sort of a nice light kind of like a champagne vinegar, vinaigrette
dressing.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Dressing. Just something like, and maybe some slivered almonds or, to give some brightness, some freshness, some texture.
Okay, now you're whetting my appetite.
Yeah. So I say, those are the things I love on the table. I mean, obviously gravy is delicious. Like, some gravy. Oh, another thing that I do like to do is for mashed potatoes. I personally like to do a mix of potatoes and parsnips and celeriac. Not a ton of parsnip and celeriac, but just a little, because there's some flavor there. There's that really nice, interesting flavor that parsnips have and celeriac has that it's really savory and really delicious. And they're white, so they don't look weird. They don't turn it gray or something funny.
Yeah.
But I like to work those into mashed potatoes, and that's another sort of thing to add another kind of dimension of flavor to the meal.
Richie, you grew a garden this summer, and I know that you had varying degrees of success with different things that you did in it, but is there anything that came from that will make its way to your table on this Thanksgiving celebration?
Well, I'm trying to think if anything kind of is. I mean, I really leaned into the tomatoes this year. But I kind of ate them as they, like, I didn't even can any tomatoes. I just ate them all.
That makes sense. I mean, I personally prefer my tomatoes fresh.
Yeah.
Not canned. Yeah.
I mean, they're, you can process them. Actually, I don't do canning. That's like above my pay grade. It's too complicated. I freeze the stuff because that's much easier. Like, I have a deep, a chest freezer or whatever you call them. And I will just make like tomato puree out of tomatoes from the garden and then just freeze them in Ziploc bags, or make spaghetti sauce or, pasta sauce or whatever with the tomatoes. But this year I didn't get around to that. And I didn't have tons of success with some of my other stuff that I tried to grow. I had some, I think either a deer or a bunny or something got in pretty early and ate a lot of the things that were growing. And I did, for instance, I had some beautiful raspberries that were they were about 3 days away from being peak perfect, ready to go. I left for a long weekend. I came back and a deer had eaten every single raspberry except for one. And I ate the raspberry and it was so good.
That's when you keep a gun handy.
I know, right? Venison.
Yeah. No, I don't even like to eat it. And I used to hunt for it as a kid, deer and elk in the Pacific Northwest. But I'll tell you, I don't like it because it's so dry and gamey for me. But yeah, raspberries are enough to kill over.
I know. I love a good raspberry. And actually, that's the thing too, is a good raspberry is hard to find because most store raspberries, those Driscoll's raspberries, are so flavorless. I mean, I will buy them and I will eat them. I'll put them in my yogurt or something, but like, they're not that great. They're pretty bland.
Actually, maybe you have to get them from the West or something. I don't know, because the ones I get that are, I mean, even the Driscoll ones that I get at Costco are pretty flavorful.
I think
but
you're right.
I will tell you, having grown up in the Pacific Northwest, where they are native in that area, and we used to go to farms and pick them directly and then bring them home and make jam from them.
Yeah.
And I became an addict by age 5, I think.
I remember that. That used to be.
I probably ate as many of them as I put in the baskets of the ones we were picking to buy.
I loved that. Yeah, we used to go to Watsonville and they had pick your own berries, and it depended on the seed. Like it'd be like pick your own strawberries or boysenberries or blackberries or whatever. And yeah, it was so fun.
Yeah, just down the road from where I grew up is a little town called Puyallup, and nobody can ever pronounce it if they moved there and didn't grow up there. But it's where the big Western Washington State Fair is every year. And we used to go to Puyallup, and they had all these strawberry fields. Mm-hmm. And one summer, I decided to join my friends. I can't even remember what grade we were in, but, they had a school bus that came and picked you up in the morning, and you went and you worked all day, and they paid you slave wages for basically picking strawberries for them. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't so fond of strawberries that summer, but I used to go pick them in the summer, and they certainly are great right out of the field, but not a job I want to do. And speaking of that, that's another reason I'm very concerned about, what's going to be happening here around where I live, because a lot of the nation's breadbasket or vegetable basket is farmed right here all throughout the state of California, of course. But there is an immense amount, like most of the lettuce in the United States of America comes from about 40 miles to the east of me. And who's going to pick that? I have not yet ever seen a white kid looking to go out and pick food in the fields during the summer here, ever. No. Not ever.
No, it's a really good point.
Get ready for your salad to cost you $70 at a restaurant.
Yeah. So,
making America great again.
Exactly. Well, I think I want to end this on a note of gratitude. I want to say that I am grateful for the listeners to this podcast. I'm grateful to my co-host, John McMullen, for doing this with me. I hope that the listeners find it to be informative and fun. I enjoy making the show. To me, it's a great thing for me. I really like doing it. But, I'm grateful that we have this outlet and that we get to get together twice a week and have something for our listeners to enjoy, hopefully. And I'm looking forward to doing this going forward into the future.
Yeah, me too. And I appreciate that. And I would echo your remarks. I am grateful for having really a best friend who lives in the Hudson Valley of New York and joins me twice a week doing this program, which is really an exercise of passion, love, and by the way, there's some funny and fun pictures that we told you that are going to start to appear. There's one in particular that I'm probably going to show you at some point here soon that is representative of that. This is not something, I think people realize because we don't have advertisers on the program at this point. That's not necessarily the way it's always going to be. But because of that, I hope that you understand that this is not a project for either Richie or I to try and get rich quick on. If anything, it's been just the opposite. However, it does show you that it is a passion project and one that we do out of our love for our community and that we love to do by being here a couple of times every week and doing it without any sort of financial remuneration. So we appreciate you being along with us, and we hope that you have a very happy, healthy, and safe holiday week this week. If you're going to be traveling to be with friends or family or chosen family, please be safe and be right back here with us for our next episode, which will be coming up next Saturday, right after the Thanksgiving holiday. We'll look forward to seeing you then. Richie, happy Thanksgiving to you, and I hope that you have a great week.
Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you for joining us on Richie and John. This podcast is a production of the Mutual Broadcasting System and is available at richieandjohn.com, as well as most major podcast portals, including Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Spotify.